I didn't realize how much you could like really see where we redid that front end. It's pretty noticeable. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Hard Angle Barn. The sun is just starting to peek over the trees, so I apologize if I'm squinting super bad. But recently, well, actually, since we put this car together, the starter's been doing this, and I wanted to stop doing that. It misses the flywheel so much. It does it multiple times a day. I've a few times already sat at, rudders or sheets or something getting gas, and I've hit the starter 10 times or more before it catches the flywheel and spins the motor over. So we're going to drop the motor out of it again today, and I'm going to put the stock flywheel back on. So we've already done that on video. I'm just going to get it out, and we'll speak again there. Okay, so of course when I want it to do it, it's like, no, I'm not doing it. Now it's grabbing every time. It did it yesterday. Alright, well, it's been about 2 weeks since I decided I wasn't going to pull the motor out. I was just going to deal with the grinding thing a little bit. It started doing it some more, and then it started doing it pretty common. But I feel like I had like some car god looking out for me or something, because this thing just blew a steering rack. Like really bad. Like I sat there and looked at the reservoir sit there, and just like the level go down over a couple minutes. Did it right when I got home, so that was nice. It didn't do it when I was out on the road. But if I had pulled the motor to switch the flywheel, it would have blown a rack, and I would have had to do that too. So now I'm just going to pull the motor out to do the flywheel and do the rack where it's super easy to get to. So kind of works out. So let's get to stripping it. Alright, this was a really good day. I got started pretty early in the morning. Not as early as I'd like to, but still pretty early. So, floor's kind of cleaned up. There's no engine in the car. The engine's over here. There's a ton of parts all over the bench, which I'm going to deal with some other time. Jacks and tools are put away. Yeah, gotta pull the rack. And I can definitely see why it blew. The rack itself is so dirty. It probably just demolished those seals. We'll see that when it comes out. But that's it for tonight. All right, while I have this part out, since I have a new sandblaster, go ahead and blast up this rusty battery tray and see what we can do with it. Alright, time to pull the steering rack out. Gotta undo this bolt and that line and the line below it. And then I can't zoom in on the rest of the bolts because you can't even see them from here. Anyway, it's pulled out. Alright, the super gross rack is out. You can see it's packed full of dirt. It's very gross. And you can see the rack itself is packed full of dirt, which is probably why I blew out a seal. So I really wish I had the funds right now to strip this bay and paint it and then paint the car, but yeah, that SR20 swap in the Spec has been a lot more expensive than expected. So I got this trans mount out. I'm gonna pop these rubber bushings out, cover this one up for sandblasting, because I want to make a couple parts in this engine bay look a little better, since I can't paint the whole bay. And I'm gonna do a couple little miscellaneous mounts. The battery support, the rad mounts. Give them a good sandblasting, and try to make them look at least a little better. This car's been somewhat good to me, so I think he deserves a little bit of prettying up. Alright, so update on this. So I just had to spend a little over $300 on the Sentra. After getting the rack apart, the seal that is bad is actually the one that's all the way in the middle of the body. If I knew more about racks, I would have known that just by knowing it was leaking by the driver's side. But again, never done a rack before. I've never even had to change one. So anyway, bought a new rack. The two outer tie rods were bad and the bellows were bad on this one, so getting a new rack fixes that. Oh, and the driver's side inner tie rod was bad, so this will replace that. And in here, if I can show you in the engine bay, you can see the sway bar bushings aren't, you know, in great condition, or even in the right place for that matter. Supposed to be in that thing like they are over here. So I got new sway bar link. Nope. I got new sway bar bushings, and I got new sway bar links while we're at it. Just since we're going to be running this thing in grid life next year, I want it to be tip-top. Obviously not cosmetically, because the engine bay looks like garbage. It's so dirty, but there's not much I can do about that now with the budget I have, especially since I got to get the white spec done too. So anyway, let's throw this rack back together so I can get my core charge back for it, and we'll move on to something else. Oh yeah, I've been sandblasting all my parts to make them pretty. I don't know where they are. Some of them are over there. I'm painting some of them. And I broke my sandblaster last night, so I got to spend some more money that I don't technically have. Woo! So much fun. So what actually went wrong in here? I don't have the thing plugged in, so I can't turn the lights on. What I think went wrong is the siphon tube down here. There's a hole in the back of it behind this hose, and the bottom of it's super rusty, so I think something went bad with the siphon tube. Alright, I got a couple parts left over that are still going to be usable. This is back in one piece. I'm going to go ahead and put this thing outside till it's boxed to get shipped back. Arrives with my new rack, and clean on my table. So I'm getting a couple parts painted up right now. I got this big trans mount taped up, blasted, and ready for paint. Just trying to tidy up the engine bay a little bit while I wait on parts. And we're going to next tackle this little bit of rust that was starting by the trans mount. Ow, I just ran my arm into that. We're gonna have to blast this all out, and I'll just prime it just so it doesn't get bad. And then we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the main problem, or what was the main problem before the rack exploded. But what is this super chewed up racing flywheel? So it's getting sunlight now that this trans mount is nice and pretty. and all the rust is gone from here. Let's go ahead and bolt these two together, see what it looks like, even though obviously my sandblaster broke, so I can't do this bracket. It's not going to look perfect, but it'll look a lot better. Not rusty. You ready? Looks pretty good. All this is going to be covered by the battery tray, unfortunately. But it's not color matched anyways, so it's probably good you can't see it. But yeah, other than this bracket not being done, this looks pretty good. Looks all nice. Just don't look at it from the other direction, you can see the other side of the bay. Or the back of the bay. All of the bay looks bad, okay? This trans mount looks good. Focus on that. No, that, yes, this. Just look at, don't look at anything else, just that. You can see some of these teeth are really chewed up. Why don't I put this down and then look at it? Yeah, they're pretty much flattened out. Over here it's not too bad, and then it gets really bad really fast. Yeah, I'm not sure why the starter didn't agree with this flywheel, but it really didn't get along. So it's a shame we can't run it, but it's just causing too many issues. I was just looking for the spacer for this that I need to get it onto the flywheel, the adapter, whatever you want to call it. And I never realized how many QR Spec V throttle bodies I had, but I have quite a few for some reason. Well, no, because that was the issue with the white Spec, so I was using a lot of spares. Alright, I finally found the piece that goes in the back of this dual mass. It was in a box with the old crank for the white Spec that I already checked but didn't check well enough. So that took an hour. Alright, I'm not sure if this has anything to do with why the starter would always miss, but you can see on the starter teeth, look at the top of the flywheel, the left side of them is chamfered so that the starter gear can kick into it. But on the flywheel here, the aftermarket one, the right side of the tooth is chamfered. And I think this has to do with which direction the starter turns in order to engage the flywheel, and I'm going to trust Nissan a lot better than XTD. So I'm not gonna say that that's the cause, but that's what would stick out the most to me, that the wrong side of the tooth is chamfered, and when it's, you know, spins, like whichever way it's spinning to go in, it's hitting the wrong side of the tooth, which is a sharp edge, and then it skips off of it instead of popping in. Alright, so trans is installed. This whole thing is ready to go back in the car as soon as the new rack shows up. So however long that is. Alright, good morning. Wow, that's sun. Alright, we're gonna step over this way. Alright, anyway, the rack and all the other parts I ordered showed up in about 3 days. The engine's ready to go already, so let's chuck everything in this engine bay, and we could have this thing potentially running by the end of today. Look at my new Mold Tool flag. I only ever run Super Tech, so that's kind of hypocritical, but I like their oil. I'm just too cheap. Plus, I don't race. I did not mean to film this way. So before the rack goes in, we're going to change out the sway bar links. You can see they're pretty well toasted. Bushing over here is not terrible for the sway bar itself. I want to pull this whole thing out and clean it. This bushing is totally shot. It's not even in its housing. And get this replaced too. The rubber's just all smashed, so get a little extra canyon performance out of this little car. Alright, sway bar's out. The links are like seized in, so I'm just gonna get the grinder and cut those out. But very, very dirty, very gross. Alright, everything's switched out. Got the new links in. The bar's all cleaned up. New bushings are in. Everything looks good to go. Time to chuck this rack in here, which is going to be super fun because it's kind of big. Quick tip too, the 2 feed lines for your rack, this little nozzle and this line, and this line, both have O-rings. They will send you new ones. Do not forget to replace those. Alright, the new rack is in. Everything's clean, everything's tight. Sway bar's looking good, new rack's looking good. It makes the engine bay look that much worse, but like I said, my goal is to run in grid life next season, so this is good prep. Alright, the engine's almost in, but unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drop it back down to the floor. Power steering lines on this new rack, they stick out past the end of the body, whereas on the old power steering rack, you can see they are within the confines of the end of that body. So I'm gonna have to put those lines on the new rack, and I'm gonna have to get the engine out of the way to do that. So, woohoo! So I got the lines off the rack, got them all sitting over here. These are this is the new line, this is the old line. If I line them up, they are about the same. But, as you can see by all the scratch marks, this is the one that's actually getting hit. And that's quite a bit different. So I technically don't have to change both, but I'm just going to change both to the old ones, and that's that. Man, I cannot point the camera where I want to. I don't know what happened, but I guess I'm out of the loop. Alright, let's get this last power steering line in. So this part of the transmission is hitting the sway bar now. It's possible to have it in backwards. I don't think it's exactly the same side to side. So I'm gonna try to flip it and see what happens. So because I couldn't adjust the tilt of the motor, that's why I was having so many problems hitting over here. I did have the sway bar in backwards. I'm not sure that matters much, but it was touching the power steering lines. Now it's not. The other ones definitely wouldn't have worked, so I did have to change them. Trans mount's bolted up. This front mount is bolted up. I forgot to put the lower, well, let's just call this the engine cross member on after I picked the engine up off the dolly. So I'm just going to slide it into there right now, and I think the bolts are in place. So yeah, I'll just pull those out, pop that thing on, and then bolt this thing into the car all the way. Alright, it is sitting on the wheels. I got parts painted, ready to go. The engine is fully bolted in. The axles are in. Tie rods are hooked up. I need to do an alignment. I guessed where the steering wheel was terribly wrong. Yeah, not a good job. I gotta take the steering shaft coupler off. I hit it tomorrow. It's almost dinner time. So, good day. So I just got this thing aligned. I got 2 millimeters of toe in on it. Steering wheel is still 90 degrees off. I'm guessing we're pretty much straight as to where I'm going to set the steering wheel angle. So I'm just going to have to go in here. I left the shifter cables unhooked for now. Pull that bolt and turn the wheel. Put it in the right spot. I used my calipers and I made sure I have an equal amount of thread on both inner tie rods so that I'm taking the same amount out of each side. That way I don't have, you know, one side that has like 1.5 inches of thread in and then one that has like 200 thousandths and it's barely in there. So I got 800 thousandths or just over 3/4 of an inch thread in both outer tie rod. So we're good to go. I just got to center the wheel and then I can chuck on the shifter cables and the intake and we should be ready to start it, move it outside, and I can put all the front end stuff back on. All right, wheel is straight, steering wheel is straight. On to the next. As you can see, we got coolant filled. I just filled the trans. Cables are hooked up. Intake is on. We have oil, but the thing won't focus on it because it won't stop moving. There we go. Full of oil. Let's put the battery in and see if it starts. I just remembered I have to bleed the power steering. So I fill up the reservoir. I'm going to crank it back and forth a bunch of times and try to get all the air out. Alright, we're just waiting for the coolant to bleed. The power steering pump's not screaming anymore. Now we wait for more bubbles to come out of that. Alright, let's take it for a spin. Clutch works. Brake's still pretty good. Also nice to know that the starter doesn't miss all the time now. It also feels terribly slow. I've been driving like a 300 horsepower Altima and a truck with 380 foot-pounds torque, so this feels awful. I don't see anything that screams problems.
It smells hot.
It smells hot. Alright, we got the front bumper on. I'm going to go ahead and take it for a spin. So that is a wrap on fixing this thing again. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope to see you in the next one, and I'll talk to y'all later.
I'm just calling to say I